Welcome. It's dawn. It's Wednesday, late October, and I have literally books piled all around me because I could not decide what I would read next. And after 2 nights of picture books, and then I can't stand watching myself play back in a video. I try to watch just to make myself more competent or whatever, but I watched back and I don't like, it doesn't do the picture books any justice to not use the correct tools like a document camera or even just be closer the way it belongs. And it's not as exciting for me. I like chapter books, like adult novels. So switching back to reading a chapter a night, and I welcome you. Hello. I decided to read the next book. It's kind of a good American, all-American, romantic, wild, dreamy novel. It's called Shoeless Joe, and by W.P. Kinsella. And on the cover, you can see they made a movie with Kevin Costner, and it's "If you build it, he will come." And we're going to learn what that means. The movie's Field of Dreams. Field of Dreams is based on this novel. And this novel is like a triumph of hope. And I think if I'm going to be reading this October 28th, 29th, maybe the 30th, I doubt Friday night, I have plans. And then next Monday and then next Tuesday, election night, I think we need all the hope we can come up by. And so I decided to read this. Also, sweet little fact, I gave this book to my late husband, Adrian, and it's inscribed with a message, and it's really sweet. It says, I was literally like, what am I going to read? Fahrenheit 51? No. Gosh, there's so much drama in that. We have enough drama in the world, right? And then I was like, Lord of the Flies. No, still. I can't pick. And then I picked up The Great Gatsby. And then I was like, oh, I do not want to talk about Gatsby. And then I was like, what is a hopeful novel? Where's my hopeful novel? And then I scrolled across this one in my library, and it says, A, enjoy, my love. Dream all you can imagine, and it will be yours. Love, Dawn. So, little known fact, my husband was not a reader. He went to college on a full ride baseball scholarship, Division I, shortstop, full ride at UCF. And so he wasn't a reader, and here I am, that's my jam. And so he said, well, if you wanted me to read a book, what would it be? And I picked this one, and he read it, and he loved it. So at the beginning, there's a quote from Bobby Kennedy, and it says, some men see things as they are and say, why? I dream of things that never were and say, why not? So this is chapter 1, Shoeless Joe Jackson Comes to Iowa. See, this is why I need to read chapter books also, because it doesn't matter what the words and if there's no pictures, it needs to be more about just the reading than it is like the showing of the pictures, even though that's fun sometimes. I'd rather read the chapter book. So welcome, friends. Hello. How are you? Good evening. I'm not showing my little captions. I can fix that in the middle now because I'm a whiz at this. All right. So, oh, yay. On Twitch. I have my friends on Twitch, and I love that novel. I read it in school. Yes. Good. I'm glad you read it in school because some people never read it until I got them to. All right. Said these chapters, there are only 5 chapters. So I will probably not read one whole chapter a night. It might be chapter 1 continued because they're 20-page long chapters. So my father said, you ready? Here we go. My father said he saw him years later playing in a 10th-rate commercial league in a textile town in Carolina wearing shoes and an assumed name. He'd put on 50 pounds in the spring, and the spring was gone from his step in the outfield, but he could still hit. Oh, how that man could hit. No one has ever been able to hit like Shoeless Joe. 3 years ago at dusk on a spring evening when the sky was a robin's egg blue and the wind as soft as a day-old chick, I was sitting on the veranda of my farm home in eastern Iowa when a voice clearly said to me, "If you build it, he will come." The voice was that of a ballpark announcer. As he spoke, I instantly envisioned the finished product I knew I was being asked to conceive. I could see the dark, squarish speakers, like ancient sailors' hats, attached to the aluminum paint light standards that glowed down into the baseball field, my present position being directly behind home plate. In reality, all anyone else could see out there in front of me was a tattered lawn of mostly dandelions and a quake grass that petered out at the edge of the cornfield, perhaps 50 yards from the house. So there he just had that moment behind home plate where he's looking out at that field and he can just see all the bases and the green and that just perfection that you get when you're watching when you're at home plate, right? Anyone else was my wife, Annie. And there I go on Instagram. I'm sorry, this week you guys have not been fortunate. I recorded, it didn't record, you missed one night, I never got back to doing it. And right now it looks like it's blacking out. So I apologize. Try YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Where else? I think that's it. Okay, so anyone. So anyone else was my wife, Annie, my daughter, Karen, and a corn-colored collie named Carmelita Pope, and a cinnamon white guinea pig named Junior who ate spaghetti and sang each time the fridge door opened. Karen and the dog were not quite 2 years old. "If you build it, he will come," the announcer repeated in the scratchy Middle American, as if his voice has been recorded on an old 78 RPM record. A 3-hour lecture or a 500-page guidebook could not have given me clearer directions. Dimensions of ballparks jumped over and around me like fleas. Cost figures for light standards and floodlights whirled around in my head like the moths that dusted against the porch light above me. That was all the instruction I ever received. 2 announcements and a vision of a baseball field. I sat on the veranda until the satiny dark was complete. A few curdly clouds stripped the moon, and I became so silent I could hear my eyes blink. Our house is one of those massive old farm homes, square as a biscuit box with a sagging veranda on 3 sides. The floor of the veranda slopes, so the marbles, baseballs, tennis balls, and ball bearings all accumulate in a corner like a herd of cattle clustered with their backs to a storm. That's the thing about wood, especially wood outside, is it tends to get its own little shape, right? On the north veranda is a wooden porch swing where Annie and I sit on humid August nights, sip lemonade from teary glasses, and dream. When I finally went to bed and after Annie inched into my arms in the way she has, like a cat that you suddenly find asleep in your lap, I told her about the voice and I told her that I knew what it wanted me to do. "Oh, love," she said, "if it makes you happy, you should do it." And she found my lips with hers. I shivered involuntarily as her tongue touched mine. Annie, she has never once called me crazy. Just before I started the first landscape work, as I stood looking out at the lawn and the cornfield, wondering how it could look so different in daylight, considering the notion of accepting it all as a dream and abandoning it, Annie appeared at my side and her arm circled my waist. She leaned against me and looked up, cocked her head like one of the red squirrels that scamper along the power lines from the highway to the house. "Do it, love," she said, as I looked down on her, that slip of a girl with the hair color of cayenne pepper and at least 1,000,000 freckles on her face and arm. That girl who lives in blue jeans and t-shirts and at 24 could still pass for 16. I thought back to when I first knew her. I came to Iowa to study. She was the child of my landlady. I heard her one afternoon outside my window as she told her girlfriends, "When I grow up, I'm going to marry," and she named me. Isn't that cute? The others were going to be nurses, teachers, pilots, or movie stars. But Annie chose me as her occupation. 8 years later, we were married. How many of you have that kind of sweetheart love where you just like met each other and said, "That's the one, I'm done"? Can anyone share that with me? I would love to hear that. Sweet story. I chose willingly, lovingly to stay in Iowa. Eventually, I rented this farm, then bought it, operating it 1 inch from bankruptcy. I don't seem meant to farm, but I want to be close to this precious land for Annie and me to be able to say, "This is ours." Now I stand ready to cut into the cornfield, to chisel away a piece of our livelihood to use as dream currency. And Annie says, "Oh, love, if it makes you happy, you should do it." My phone just completely died. It did. My Instagram is done. All right. Well, that is that. I kind of give up on them. I give up. Sorry. It just doesn't want to do my live videos this week. Where's my page? All right. So they wanted to say this was fun. And so here she is, like, all she says is, "Oh, love, if it makes you happy, you should do it." I carry her words in the back of my mind, stored the way a maiden aunt might wrap a brooch. Which one is it? A brooch. I think it's a brooch. Although it's double O, it's a weird one. It's a brooch. A remembrance of a long-lost love. I understand how hard that was for her to say and how it got harder as the prospect advanced. Meaning in the beginning, he's cutting down his cornfield that he could sell the corn to build a baseball field in likely the middle of nowhere if it's Iowa. And his wife is like, "Sure, honey, if it makes you happy." But then as the project advanced, he says it got harder. That would make sense. How she must have told her family not to ask me about the baseball field I was building because they stared at me dumb-eyed, a row of silent, thick-set peasants with red faces. Not an imagination among them except to forecast the wrath of God that will fall upon the heads of pagans such as I. If you build it, he will come. He, of course, was Shoeless Joe Jackson. Joseph Jefferson, Shoeless Joe Jackson, was born in Brandon Mills, South Carolina on July 16, 1887, and he died in Greenville, South Carolina, December 5th, 1951. In April 1945, Ty Cobb picked Shoeless Joe as the best left fielder of all time. A famous sports writer once called Joe's glove the place where the triples go to die. He never learned to read or write. He created legends with a bat and a glove. Was it really a voice I heard? Or was it perhaps something inside me making a statement that I did not hear with my ears, but with my heart? Why should I want to follow this command? But I ask, I already know the answer. I count the loves in my life. Annie, Karen, Iowa, baseball. The great God, baseball. My birthstone is a diamond. When asked, I say my astrological sign is hit and run, which draws a lot of blank stares here in Iowa, where 50,000 people go to see the University of Iowa Hawkeyes football team, while 500 regulars, including me, watch the baseball team perform. So 50,000 people go to the football game. Only 500 in Iowa care about the baseball. My father, I've been told, talked baseball statistics to my mother's belly while waiting for me to be born. My husband read this before we ever had children, and we had 3 girls. So he always thought he'd get a boy and teach him baseball. It's ironic that he got 3 girls and none of them wanted to play softball. So just a little, when he was born, the narrator and this man talking to you, his dad talked to him about baseball stats while he was in the belly. So he's basically saying before he was even born, he was into baseball. My father, I know I read that. My father, no, says the same thing. Born Glen Ullin, North Dakota, April 14th, 1896. Another diamond birthstone. Never saw a professional baseball game until 1919 when he came back from World War I, where he had been gassed at, I hope I don't butcher this, Passchendaele. I'm sorry if I butchered that. He settled in Chicago, inhabited a room above a bar across from Comiskey Park, and quickly learned to live and die with the White Sox. Died a little when, as prohibitive favorites, they lost the 1919 World Series to Cincinnati. Died a lot the next summer when 8 members of the team were accused of throwing that World Series. If you're a baseball person, you know what all this is, I'm apparently thinking. Because these are all real people in the real baseball world, even though this is a fictitious book. Before I knew what baseball was, I knew of Connie Mack, John McGraw, Grover Cleveland, Alexander, Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Tris Speaker, Tinker to Evers to Chance, and, of course, Shoeless Joe Jackson. My father loved underdogs, me too. Cheered for the Brooklyn Dodgers and the hapless St. Louis Browns, loathed the Yankees. That would not be true for me or my late husband, an inherited trait, I believe, and insisted that Shoeless Joe was innocent, a victim of big business and crooked gamblers. So much gambling in baseball. What's up with that? That first night, immediately after The Voice and The Vision, I did nothing except sip my lemonade a little faster and rattle the ice cubes in my glass. The vision of the baseball park lingered, swimming, swaying, seeming to be made of red steam, though perhaps it was only the sunset. And there was a vision within the vision, one of Shoeless Joe Jackson playing left field. So not only does he feel like he's got a vision to build the baseball field, but the dead Shoeless Joe Jackson's going to go play in left field. It's a pretty big vision. Shoeless Joe Jackson, who was last Major League Baseball, who last Major League Baseball in 1920 and was suspended for life. That's a typo. It should say left and it says last. I could be an editor, I'm telling you. Along with 7 of his compatriots by Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis for his part in throwing the 1919 World Series. So, instead of nursery rhymes, I was raised on the story of the Black Box Scandal. And instead of Tom Thumb or Rumpelstiltskin, I grew up hearing of the 8 disgraced players. Weaver, Chakotay, I'm probably butchering that, Risberg, Felsch, Gandil, Williams, McMullen, and always Shoeless Joe Jackson. He hit .375, that's a really great average, by the way, against the Reds in the 1919 World Series and played errorless ball. Now, the thing about baseball is there's no such thing as errorless baseball. It's very hard to have no errors in baseball. To track the errors is just dangerous. No wonder people have a problem with it. Anyways, my father would say, scratching his head in wonder, how could he 12 hits in an 8-game series? They suspended him? Father would cry. Shoeless Joe became a symbol of the tyranny of the palace. The name Kennesaw Mountain Landis became synonymous with the devil. Building a baseball field is more work than you might think. Imagine I laid out a whole field, but it was there in spirit only. It was really on the left field only left field that concerned me. Home plate was made from pieces of 2x4 embedded in the earth. The pitcher's rubber rocked like a cradle when I stood on it. The bases were stray blocks of wood, unanchored. There was no backstop or grandstand, only one shaky bleacher beyond the left field wall. There was a left field wall, but only about 50 feet of it, 12 feet high, stained dark green, and braced from the rear. So in other words, it's like a shack. Looks just like basically just a mess, right? And the left field, and my intuition told me that it was the grass that was important. It took me 3 seasons to hone that grass to its proper texture, to its proper color. I trips to Minneapolis and 1 or 2 other cities where the stadiums still have natural grass infields and outfields. I would arrive hours before the game and watch the groundskeeper groom the field like a prize animal, and then stay after the game when the cool of the night, the same groundsmen appeared with the hose and rakes and patched the grasses like medics attending to wounded soldiers. I pretended to be building a little league ball field and asked their secrets and sometimes was told. I took interest in the total operation. They wouldn't understand if I told them I was building only a left field. 3 seasons I spent seeding, watering, fussing, praying, coddling the field like a sick child. Now it glows pot green, cool as mist, soft as moss, lying there like a cashmere blanket. I've been watching it in the evenings, sitting on the rickety bleacher just beyond the fence, a bleacher I constructed for an audience of 1. My father played some baseball, Class B, in Florida and California. I found his statistics in a dusty minor league record book. In Florida, he played for a team called the Angels. Still, this is true. And according to his records, was better than average catcher. He claimed to have visited all 48 states and every Major League Baseball park before, at 40, he married and settled down in Montana, a 2-day drive from the nearest Major League team. I tried to play, but ground balls bounced off my chest and fly balls dropped between my hands. I might have been a fair designated hitter, but the rule was too late in coming. So poor thing, he didn't even play himself. There's the story of the urchin who, tugging at Shoeless Joe Jackson's sleeves as he emerged from a Chicago courthouse, said, "Say it ain't so, Joe." Jackson replied reportedly was, "I'm afraid it is, kid," meaning he did throw the game, which means he was paid something or corrupt, right? Jackson's reply, I'm sorry, "When he comes, I won't put him on the spot by asking. The less said, the better. It's likely that he did accept money from gamblers, but throw the series, never." Shoeless Joe Jackson led both teams in hitting in that 1919 series. It was the circumstances. The players were paid peasant salaries while the owners became rich. The infamous 10-day clause, which voided contracts, could end any player's career without compensation, pension, or even a ticket home. The second spring, on a toothache May evening, a covering of black clouds lumbered off westward like ghosts of buffalo, and the sky became the cold color of a silver coin. The forecast was for frost. The left field grass was like green angora, soft as a baby's cheek. In my mind, I could see it dull and crisp, bleached by the frost, and my teeth tightened. But I used the trick a groundskeeper in Minneapolis had taught me, saying I learned it from grape farmers in California. I carried out a hose and making the spray so fine it was scarce. I sprayed the soft, shaggy spring grass all that chilled night stood there. My hands ached and my face became wet and cold, but as I watched, the spray froze on the grass, enclosing each blade in a gossamer crystal coating of ice. Gossamer means thin web-like. A covering that served like a coat of armor to dispel the real frost that was set like a weasel upon killing in the night. It seemed to stand taller than ever before. As the sun rose, turning the ice to the eye-dazzling droplets, each a prism, making the field an orgy of rainbows. And I think I'm going to stop there for the night, because that's when the frost is over and the chapters are super long. So yeah, 10 pages. So it's like a 20-page chapter. So we'll do chapter 1, part 2, chapter 1, part, right? Okay. So this is Shoeless Joe Jackson. Lots of baseball in here. No one's chatting, so I will, if you have questions or you want to talk about the book, you can do it in the comments after. So good night and sweet dreams and all my love. Sorry, Instagram.